Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the Scottish Government unveils its £60 billion tax and spending plans. The Finance Secretary announces record investment in the NHS and pledges to eventually scrap the two-child benefit cap in Scotland, with eradicating child poverty her government's top priority.
I hope that the Scottish Government putting this on a priority is going to be a priority and we'll see a difference.
It all sounds quite positive, promising. I was glad to hear about the investment in social housing.
It's great news, unless they keep the promises.
Also on tonight's programme, work on a Highland spaceport is aborted. Orbex, the rocket company behind the plans, is moving its launches to another base in Shetland.
I really like it because she's like us. Like, how many times we get rejected? Like, don't let that stop you.
How the Glaswegian artist who won this year's Turner Prize is inspiring the next generation. And coming up in the sport, it's second against first at Pittodrie, but who will come out on top as Aberdeen host Celtic? Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. So after much anticipation, the Scottish Government unveiled its budget today, its tax and spending plans for the year ahead. So let's look at some of what was announced by the Finance Secretary, Shona Robertson then. First, an area we've been reporting on a lot recently as we head into winter, the NHS. It is getting a record £21 billion. That is an increase of £2 billion. When it comes to housing, the government's going to invest £768 million in affordable homes. If you're wondering about council tax, remember there was a freeze, not anymore, and it will be up to councils to set their own council tax rate. Another big one then, income tax. The Finance Secretary said she will not introduce any new bans or increase the rates of income tax. The rabbit out the hat moment, though, a pledge to scrap the two-child benefit cap in Scotland, although we don't know the details yet of how that will work or how much it will cost. But we will unpack all of this tonight, starting with our chief political correspondent, Lindsay Bewes.
Providing warm clothes and other essentials for children living in poverty. This Aberdeen charity is helping hundreds of struggling families.
We're talking about entrenched poverty, whereby children are not attending school, haven't had breakfast, there's no food at home for night time, heating's not being on, there's no shower. It's a huge situation for a lot of these children that are affecting their day-to-day lives.
Ending child poverty is a priority for the First Minister. Now his Finance Secretary has promised to lift benefit restrictions on families with more than 2 children as early as possible in 2026.
The two-child cap is a pernicious part of the UK welfare system. Introduced by the Tories, it has caused misery for children and families in Scotland. Many expected an incoming Labour government to abolish the cap. We've waited, but Labour haven't delivered. This SNP government will.
And with many struggling to find affordable homes, there was a reversal of last year's cut to the housing budget.
Great, brilliant first step, but we've got over 250,000 people across Scotland on waiting lists for social and council housing. That is a drop in the ocean.
Lower and middle earners will benefit slightly from income tax changes too, and there was help for hospitality businesses with a 40% discount on rates. But that reduction doesn't apply to retailers. The organisation representing them says that's disappointing.
The costs have increased hugely. They're paying off debt. They're finding the cost of employing staff increasing through, for example, the last UK budget. So absolutely it's getting more difficult for businesses to survive.
The Finance Secretary says investment in the green economy will drive growth, helping towards £21 billion for health and social care and £15 billion for councils, who are also free to raise council tax bills next year. Holyrood's opposition parties criticise the tax and spending plans.
Workers and business will pay more in tax, only for that money to be wasted by SNP ministers who let public services decline.
1 in 6 Scots on an NHS waiting list. Schools falling further behind. A national housing emergency. Growth lagging behind the rest of the UK. Every Scottish institution weaker.
And the smaller parties say the minority government hasn't yet done enough to secure their votes.
This does not guarantee our support. As in all budgets, the devil will be in the detail.
If they want Green support, significant further changes will be required. This budget will need to do much more for people and planet.
This is just a first draft of the government's tax and spending plans for next year. They'll now have to negotiate with opposition MSPs ahead of a final vote in February. Lindsay Bewes, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
Well, we've heard from the politicians, but what does this budget mean for you? Our correspondent David Henderson spent the day in Falkirk to gauge reaction.
Another busy day begins for Annie Mackenzie. Time for a coffee before the start of work. She and her partner rent their home and dream of owning their own place. But she told me the cost of living crisis has not made that easy, and more affordable housing is a top priority for her.
It is a challenge, just simply due to the cost of living. We try to save, but again, that's sometimes when things come up, emergencies, car repairs, those savings need to get eaten into. So getting that deposit as well is a big challenge to even get on the housing ladder.
What do you need them to do?
Personally, for me, would be to invest in communities, invest in housing.
Just up the road in the centre of Falkirk, the allotment cafe's doing a roaring trade. But owner Erdal Ozer tells me he's counting the cost of higher tax. He wants the Scottish Government to offer the same discount on rates that's given to retailers in England.
What difference does it make to your margins?
This will affect the customers, because then I need to bring the cost up, then need to change the menu, then the new prices, and then everybody going to notice that. That is just going to be affected the customers and clients and community.
For nearly 1 million pensioners, this budget brings a new winter fuel benefit as Scottish ministers look to soften the impact of cuts imposed at Westminster. But the payment won't arrive until late next year.
So what happens if we likely get a bad winter? A lot of older people will not be here next year to get the money.
Well, the way I look at it, it's a bit late in the day, I think.
Too late.
Too late in the day.
Yeah, certainly too late. Too late.
It was lovely the way it was, but then people got it who didn't really need it. So it's good that's been corrected, I suppose.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm managing, but it means you've got to watch your pennies more.
Let me summarise the measures this SNP government sets out today.
Well, that's the budget delivered. What do they make of that?
It all sounds quite positive, promising. I was glad to hear about the investment in social housing and affordable housing. That's really positive for me.
It's a great news, unless they keep the promises.
And for your existing business,
then
you see tax fall?
Yeah, so as an existing business, yes, we will get good relief as an rate, which is allows us and then to invest more.
So the budget's been set out and its effects will ripple out across Scotland. Here they may find there's help for some, but not all. David Henderson, reporting Scotland, Falkirk.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of our political editor, Glenn Campbell, who joins me now. Glenn, let's deal with that headline grabber first, the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap here. Was that a surprise?
I think it was a surprise and certainly the most eye-catching announcement in this budget. We don't know how it will be delivered, except that the Scottish Government says it needs access to data held by the UK Department for Work and Pensions if it's to get this policy in place. It's not proposing to do that in the next financial year. The money for it isn't earmarked in this proposed budget. Instead, it's hoping that it can work out the details between now and March 2026, just before the next Holyrood elections. Its own financial advisers at the Scottish Fiscal Commission haven't had the chance to cost the policy, although some close to government say it's likely to be worth between 110 and 150 million pounds. The Scottish Fiscal Commission says without detailed costings at this stage, it would pose a fiscal risk.
Yeah, Glenn, and just briefly, we know there's still a lot of detail to be poured over, but how likely are the government to get this through?
I think that it's more likely than not that there will be a budget. It won't be the budget that was announced today. There will still have to be some tweaks to it in order for there to be sufficient support in Parliament. They know that they need to bring on side at least some of their opponents, and I think it was quite a clever budget politically because it included policies from, I think, all their political opponents in Parliament, and I think it sets something of an elephant trap for the Labour Party. What will they do when it comes to a vote? Are they really going to vote down a budget that includes the partial reintroduction of previously cut payments for winter fuel help for pensioners? Are they going to vote against a budget that now proposes to end the two-child cap on benefits? These are big questions for Labour, and they're going to have to come up with some good answers.
OK, Glenn Campbell at Holyrood, thank you. Well, our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, is here now. Douglas, we know times are tough. Is this budget going to make a difference?
Well, I think this was a budget to restore some predictability, some stability after some years of quite a lot of turmoil and change of First Ministers and so on. You could argue that this bore the imprint of John Swinney more than Shona Robeson, the Finance Secretary, with a focus on the First Minister's priorities, including the economy and child poverty. Looking at the assessment by the Scottish Fiscal Commission mentioned there by Glenn, it calculates the spending and the taxation for the Scottish Government. That raises questions about longer-term challenges in the budget process that are not yet being challenged in what we heard today, not being tackled. Today we got more promises, commitments being made on welfare spending, the winter fuel payment for older people, that two-child limit on benefits. Welfare is taking up an increasing share of spending by Holyrood. It's not all funded by the Treasury in London, and so that squeezes out more and more of public services. This budget doesn't account for the rise in national insurance for public sector employers. That figure comes later. It leaves questions unanswered on cuts to the public sector workforce, on what reform of the public sector is going to look like, on reform of council tax and business rates, also not tackled. And we learned today that income tax revenue is growing more slowly than in the rest of the UK, and that implies a continued squeeze on the money available for public spending.
Lots to talk about, but we shall have to leave it there. Thank you, Douglas. To other news now, and the lifespan of Scotland's last remaining nuclear power station is being extended. EDF Energy says Torness in East Lothian will continue generating for an extra 2 years until 2030. 3 related sites in England have also seen their operations extended. Our energy and environment correspondent Kevin Keane has more.
It's been the backbone of Scotland's electricity generation for more than 3 decades. And for the 750 workers here, today's reprieve gives them 2 more years of work.
I think it's really motivating for me to be part of an industry that's so innovative and progressive.
Andrea is a relatively new recruit. She says the extension provides her with more career options.
It's a really positive decision. Obviously, I'm just early on in my career, having been here over a year now. I've got a lot of aspirations and goals for my career path, so I'm very committed to working at Torness, and the fact that the life has been extended, that really reiterates my existing confidence I've already got in Torness and nuclear.
So this is reactor 1, and right now, deep beneath my feet, that nuclear reaction is taking place, unheard and unseen. But it's generating enough electricity to power 600,000 homes.
With so many workers employed by Torness, the nearby community of Dunbar has largely welcomed the development.
Very pleased because my husband works there, he's employed out there, so it's good that it's going on for another 2 years.
It's good because a lot of people I know work there, and I don't know what would happen if it went.
Because I've got 2 son-in-laws and a grandson working there, you know, that is their income. And
the council leader says 2028 seemed frighteningly close. He sees a long-term future for the site.
We know that the UK government is currently looking at modular reactors, and we're hopeful if they do deliver modular reactors, something like that could be delivered at Torness.
The life-limiting factor of these types of nuclear power stations is the graphite bricks in the reactor core. After years of use, they're cracking, and some want generation to end.
In 2021, they said that they were having to bring the closure date forward from 2030 to 2028 because the cracks were happening at the limit of what they were expecting. So it's a bit of a surprise.
What I can say today is I'm confident in the safe operation of Torness Power Station, and that confidence gives me the ability to stand here today and announce this 2-year extension. So that's great news for our staff, it's great news for the local community, and indeed it's great news for the whole of Scotland.
A new generation of nuclear power stations is being built down south. Keeping this place open for longer helps bridge the gap before those new sites open. Kevin Kane reporting, Scotland, Torness.
Now, a rocket manufacturer is to pause construction of a spaceport in Sutherland to instead focus its launch efforts in Shetland. Orbex announced it would now aim to launch its first rockets from Saxaford Spaceport in Unst. The Sutherland Spaceport was granted planning permission in November 2020 and it was due to go here, and some initial construction work started last year. Orbex said they would retain the lease on the Sutherland site. A total of £14.6 million of public investment had gone into the project. Highlands and Islands Enterprise, who had themselves invested over £6 million, said they were deeply disappointed by the decision. Our science and innovation correspondent Laura Goodwin has more.
This is what might have been. The Sutherland Spaceport was granted planning permission in 2020, but since then progress at the site has been limited. Now rocket company Orbex say they'll pause construction and focus instead on building rockets to be launched from Saxaford Spaceport in Unst.
Saxaford offered us a almost finished spaceport with the various benefits that came along with that, which enables us to focus on finishing our rockets as we kind of build up our initial operating capability. But of course, we will need additional launch capacity in the future, and Sutherland will be able to offer us that too.
The Sutherland site has received millions of pounds of investment, including from Highlands and Islands Enterprise.
Of the £6.5 million approved, we've given the company £2 million reflecting their expenditure, so there's £4.5 million remaining. If the company decides that they're not going to progress the project, then we would look to recoup the funds.
In a statement, the local Melness Crofters estate expressed profound disappointment, saying the area has very few job opportunities for our young people, which they'd hoped the spaceport would have helped to address.
It's an incredible disappointment. It was a complete bolt from the blue. It's only just about 4 weeks ago that there was a very healthy report of how progress was going.
Plans for the Sutherland Spaceport were opposed by billionaire fashion tycoon Anders Holt Poulsen, who owns land near the site. His company, who weren't available for comment today, have invested in the Saxaford Spaceport, which already has launch platforms and relevant licences in place.
It's a very considered and sensible decision, I feel. We're obviously biased because we've got a new client, but it allows them to focus on their technology. And we're the only licensed spaceport in the country, and we can lift the burden of the spaceport off their shoulders.
There are currently 4 other proposed spaceports planned for Scotland, including Saxaford. Orbex say they hope their move will bolster plans for a launch next year. Laura Goodwin, reporting Scotland.
Well, let's get tonight's sport now with Sheila and with midweek football.
Yeah, the big games keep on coming. Hello there. It's a busy night in the Premiership with the pick of the fixtures taking place at Pittodrie, where the top 2 go head-to-head. Can defending champions Celtic extend their lead, or will Aberdeen reduce the gap and maintain their hopes of a title challenge? Tyrone Smith previews the action.
We're back in blockbuster territory tonight as the 2 teams that have been setting the Premiership pace, Aberdeen and Celtic, go head-to-head here at Pittodrie. Celtic top the table, they're undefeated in the league. In fact, the only points that they've dropped were in October when they were held to a 2-2 draw by Aberdeen at Parkhead. The Dons, they've lost just the 1 game. That's the kind of form that's posed the question, can they mount their own title challenge? Well, they're currently 4 points behind Celtic, having played a game more, and if they lose tonight, you do feel that some of that title talk will just dissipate into the cold North Sea air. Now, while the Hoops have been rampant of late, the Dons are taking a 3-game winless run into this one. A trio of away fixtures has delivered a defeat and 2 draws, and there are those who would argue that Celtic have the psychological edge, having dismantled tonight's opponents 6-0 in the League Cup semi-finals at Hampden just last month.
I remember as a player with Celtic going up there and playing, you always knew it was going to be difficult.
a hostile atmosphere. The fans get right behind the team. I think the game itself will be close. I don't think it will be like the last game. And I think it's a game that we should all be looking forward to.
Now, while nothing will be decided tonight, you do feel that the outcome could prove significant in terms of how things ultimately shake down at the top of the Premiership table. Tyrone Smith, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
Well, there are two other games taking place. It's 7th versus 5th at Dens Park as Dundee host Motherwell. And third-placed Rangers take on a Kilmarnock side who are just 3 points off the bottom, although they did beat the Ibrox team when the teams met in October. Rangers winger Yanis Hadji is expected to feature. He's back playing after a lengthy injury followed by a contract impasse.
What I can do is to obviously step on the pitch and play my best football and be as creative as possible. I'm not talking about assists or goals. I'm just talking about creating and giving different dynamics to the team. And I know what what I can bring to the table. I've shown it in the past for this football club, and I'm just happy that right now I'm back in the mix and I can do that.
St Mirren defender Marcus Fraser has had the red card he received against Dundee United overturned after the Paisley club won a Scottish FA appeal. The defender was initially yellow carded for this tussle with Louis Moult, but referee Matthew McDermott then upgraded that to a red after consulting the VAR monitor. United won the match 2-0. St Mirren's challenge against the sending off has been upheld by a tribunal, and Fraser is free to play against Motherwell this weekend.
Yeah, all the football tonight. We've now got all the art because, well, not this. There it is. Well, this is the woman that won it because, yeah, Scottish artist Jasleen Kaur has won the 2024 Turner Prize for a show about her Sikh upbringing in the south side of Glasgow. Alter Alter, which was presented at the Tramway Arts venue in Glasgow last year, included a car with a crochet covering. She's the latest in a long line of winners who studied at Glasgow School of Arts. Our arts correspondent, Polly McLean, has more.
The winner of the 2024 Turner Prize is...
She's the latest in a long line of Scots to win.
Jasleen Kaur.
And her work, with sound as well as visuals, is deeply rooted in the Sikh community in Glasgow, where she grew up.
I've had so many messages today from people from the local Sikh community and from folk that I grew up with. It means that something like this that's so visible means a lot to a lot of different people. There's a lot of different eyes on you, and it's nice to just remember that you've got connections that go way back, right? And that people, it means something to different groups, and I'm up for representing all of them.
The winning work was originally shown in Tramway, which hosted the Turner Prize in 2015 and inspired a nearby primary school to set up its own prize, which they award every January. These primary sevens say Jasleen's win has given them fresh inspiration.
I really like it because she's like us, so she really wants to spread a message and to show people, to spread awareness and to show them is to include, to have be a community.
Like how many times you get rejected, don't let that stop you because there's always more opportunities.
I've just been in to talk to the children and they are so excited, not just about the fact that you're from the neighbourhood, but the fact you're an artist of colour as well. It means a lot to them. They just find it really inspirational. And I just wondered if you were aware of that kind of connection being made.
I'm so heartened to hear that the kids are making art and finding ways to do that, because we need it more in our schools. We need it it's been dismantled, so that means a lot that the teachers are finding ways to do that against all odds.
Polly McLean, reporting Scotland.
And now Callum is here with the weather. A lovely misty, sort of mystical scene there.
Very atmospheric, isn't it, Laurie?
Yes.
It's a cold, icy start for some shallow mist and fog for some too, but the veil of cloud was on its way ahead of an active front, and it's currently throwing it down out there for many of us. Hello there, folks. Yes, teeming down along an active weather front that's been bringing some strong winds too, particularly gales up the west coast into the northwest, tied into that frontal zone, tied into this deep area of low pressure to the northwest. It's been driven in by this very strong jet stream in excess of 200 miles per hour. It's is going to continue to give very turbulent times ahead. And we've got a high wind warning at the moment for the Western Isles, Skye, northwestern coastal areas of the mainland and the Northern Isles. As we've got some severe gales here, gales as well elsewhere. It's windy, particularly around coastal areas, but it's mainly the wet weather. Very wet out there at the moment, but the front goes through very quickly to the northeast. Behind it overnight, it dries up. A few showers in the west, gradually the winds coming down hour by hour, and we'll gradually say goodbye to the severe gales in the far north. Tomorrow morning then, it's more benign, bright out there. We'll see some sunshine, best in the east and northeast, but quickly the cloud will expand in once more ahead of this next wave depression that's going to bring further heavy rain quickly in from the west during the afternoon. Some torrential bursts with this. This is the model projection. The rain could be further advanced than this by 1500 hours. The northeast clinging on to the drier conditions for longest, but the rain will be with you by the end of the afternoon. The Northern Isles so faring best bar a few showers. On the backside of this low pressure system, a swathe of strong winds in its southwestern flank for southwestern coastal areas, bringing northwesterly gales here. Another Met Office warning for those areas from 1500 hours tomorrow till 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Elsewhere, it won't be so windy, particularly further north. We'll have heavy rain pushing eastwards, perhaps some hill snow for a time, even down to 300 metres for a time before it clears for the Highlands. Behind it all, by Friday dawn, it'll be chillier, some icy patches. Then not bad on Friday morning, but marked uncertainty later Friday. This was the midnight run from the European model, keeping the low to the south. But things have been trending further north. The latest model is more like this from the GFS American model. It's very impactful weather possible late Friday into Saturday. Heavy rain, significant upland snow and strong winds.
Gosh, throwing it down indeed. Thank you very much, Callum. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. Suzanne Allen will be here with your late news at 10:30 tonight. And don't forget, you can check out your national and international news over on the 9 at 9 o'clock on the BBC Scotland channel. Until then, from everyone on the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.